Now, welcome to another one of my, what I like to call, Sunday commentary videos, where I often like to take something from Star Wars and sort of mix it up with a real world topic, and oftentimes it's a touchy or sensitive current issue. And this time I'll sort of be comparing Palpatine's villainizing and destruction of the Jedi, as seen in the prequels, with the recent push, especially or mainly here in the United States, to villainize and do away with police. I'm going to start this out, as I sometimes like to do, with a very quick personal story or two, going over some of my own interactions with police. And I know some of you will immediately say, Thor, you're a white guy, you have no idea what it's like to deal with or be targeted by police or anything like that. Your experiences are irrelevant to the topic. And well, for a moment, let's just set that debate or argument to the side, and I'll tell you about the very first time, or pretty much the first time I ever encountered the police, which was back in 1997 when I was 19 years old, and I had a first date, and a double date actually, with a girl I worked with at the time, and we were going to see the movie Men in Black, the first one. And unfortunately, this did not turn out to be the perfect evening. My date ended up working late. We worked at the same restaurant together, and it was very busy that night. So I, who was driving us all to the movie, decided to speed just a little bit to see if we could still make it in time, which led me to getting pulled over for doing 87 in a 55. Now, when the cop came up to my window and took my license and asked me the obligatory "where am I going in such a hurry" or whatever he said, I responded we were trying to make a movie. He didn't really say anything to that and just stood there, so I then, somehow stupidly thinking I would look cool and impress my date, and incredibly we dated for 2 years after this, I followed it up by saying to the cop, "If you're going to give me a ticket, can you hurry up so we can still make the movie?" And, oddly enough, the cop wasn't humored by that at all, nor did he hurry up as requested. Instead, in a no-nonsense voice, he just told me to get out of the car, which I did without hesitation, though with some, I'll be honest, mounting fear. He then grabbed me by the arm and basically dragged me back to his car, where he positioned me in a spot next to his vehicle on the side of the road, and in a voice not to be argued with, told me to stand right there and do not move even 1 inch while he runs my information, and so on. And after, maybe 15 minutes or so of standing as still as I ever have in my entire life, it's hard to say just how long it was for sure because it felt like an eternity. All I know is it was enough time for us to, of course, miss the movie, but also enough time for me to think long and hard about the situation I put myself in. After all, I made the choice to speed and then to say what I did. Not that I really realized or thought about that at the time, I was just scared and my mind was racing. The cop then got out of his car, handed me a ticket, and rather politely actually, wished me a good evening and told me I could be on my way. And looking back at that night all these years later, I'm still not entirely sure if the cop was just trying to teach me a lesson, or if he was trying to be a dick, or maybe a little bit of both, which is probably the case. I'm sure he dealt with stupid kids that said stupid things all the time. A few months after this incident then, I got pulled over again for speeding, and this time the cop barely said 2 words to me, if even that many. He just took my license, gave me a ticket, and that was that. Not long after this then, I got a letter in the mail saying I had lost my driver's license, which also meant I had lost my job as a delivery driver at the aforementioned restaurant. And after this, I promptly started to hate the police for, as I saw it, ruining my sad yet happy little life, even though I was the one who had been speeding and in the wrong. And for a little while there, back in my youth, my favorite song became "Killing in the Name of" by Rage Against the Machine. I would blast it in my car as I drove around without a license, feeling like I was being rebellious or something. And I'm pretty sure that stupid kid I was then would be all for defunding the police right now because I was ignorant and hot-headed and, again, wanted to be rebellious or something. And again here, I know some of you are going to say your stories are weak, Thor. That's nothing compared to what some people have to go through with the police. And they didn't even do anything wrong in the first place. Sometimes people wrongly even lose their life at the hands of cops, not just their driver's license because they're a stupid kid with a lead foot. But before going on here, I do want to give one last quick cop story, and this one happened several years later when I was in my mid-20s, and a large group of my friends got together for a bachelor party, my best friend's bachelor party, and pretty much all of them, save me since my friend's future wife, and now ex-wife, asked me to make sure her fiance at the time ended up okay and to bring him home safe at the end of the night. Anyway, they all got drunk, high, or a combination of the two, everyone except for me. And though I don't remember why it worked out this way, but 6 of us got stranded at a club at like 2 in the morning with only one car, and that car turned out to be my friend's Dodge Neon, which, if you don't know, isn't exactly the largest vehicle ever. And I think we may have defied the laws of physics that night because somehow we got all 6 of us grown-ass men into this thing and somehow it still managed to move with that much weight. And before I could even get the first person home, sure enough, we got pulled over, and the cop even told me the reason why he caught his attention was because of how low to the ground the car was because of all the weight that must be in it. Anyway, I remember thinking as soon as I saw his lights flashing in the old rearview mirror that we were screwed. Though I was pretty much nose blind to it at that point, I can only imagine what the car smelled like when he walked up to the window, but no doubt the smell of alcohol and illegal substances was strong in the air. Not to mention what it looked like to have that many guys crammed into a tiny car, none of which wearing seatbelts, which are of course required by law. And so as soon as he got up to the car, no surprise, he immediately asked me to step out of the vehicle and told them all to stay put or else. We then walked back towards his car a bit. There was no dragging by the arm this time, and he simply asked me point blank, what in the hell is going on here? So you know what I did? I told him the entire truth, the whole story, as calmly and as rationally as I could. And do you know what he did? He not only let us go without asking to search the car or anything, and who knows what the hell he would have found, but he thanked me for being a responsible friend to all of them, and that was that. Not even a seatbelt ticket was issued. Okay, so assuming you've made it this far into the video, you're probably wondering what my point here is with all these stories, and when does Star Wars come into the picture? Well, it's that every encounter I've ever had with police has been very different, because every police officer and the way I personally interacted with them was different. If you asked me to give a general statement about my experience with cops, I simply couldn't do it, because every experience has been unique in many different ways, from the reason for the encounter, to the way I treated them, to maybe even just the mood they or I was in. And yet nowadays many people want to make the argument or general statement that all cops are bad, or that we should just get rid of them altogether. But even if you're someone out there who has had a truly horrific experience with police, or many of them, and I certainly know some people have, I'm not trying to discount that or defend bad cops, it's still not fair to say all cops are bad. A lot of them, the vast majority of them, whether you want to believe it or not, do great things every single day. They're out there protecting the public, and no one ever talks about or thanks them for that. Cops kind of remind me of offensive linemen in football, you know, the guys protecting the quarterback. When they do their job and do it well, everything goes fine and they barely get any recognition. But let the quarterback get sacked one time and they're immediately called out for it. But at least in football, it's only the one who failed that usually takes the blame. When it comes to cops, it tends to be all of them that somehow take the blame for the failures of the few or the one. And to finally start to relate this to Star Wars a bit, imagine if all the Jedi were judged based on Anakin's actions in Revenge of the Sith when he leads an attack against the Jedi Temple and ends up slaughtering younglings. And I know some of you will say that at that point he was no longer a Jedi and had fallen to the dark side. And sure, that's true, he had fallen to the dark side, but that didn't mean every other Jedi had. The same way if one cop falls to the dark side and does something horrific, that doesn't mean they all have or will do something horrible. In fact, Palpatine sold to the whole damn Republic that the Jedi were all corrupt and needed to be exterminated based on the actions of only 4 Jedi, the ones who came to his office to arrest him. He used the worst example, or what looked to be the worst example. We know the Jedi were in the right, done by just 4 of them to make a case against 10,000 Jedi, or however many were still left at this time. And despite the fact that the Jedi had literally been fighting a war for the Republic to protect it, and the war no doubt took its toll on those who fought it, just like the job of being a police officer, hunting down and protecting all of us from the worst in society, takes its toll on those who do it for years and years on end, but we never give that a second thought. We never ask ourselves what it's like to actually be a cop. We never stop and realize cops are people too, people that often put their lives in danger every single day, and yet we expect each and every one of them to be perfect all the time, to never make any sort of mistake. And if that's the standard they're being held to, each and every one of them will ultimately fail in some respect, because human beings are not and cannot be perfect. And I'm by no means saying here we should tolerate the mistakes they make, especially the major ones, or any form of racial profiling, or any unfair practices that some have. I'm not saying they should have immunity or be able to act with impunity. Police who commit crimes or blatantly abuse their authority should always be dealt with and punished. There absolutely needs to be accountability in their line of work. Even small infractions need to be addressed and corrected. But at the same time, we can't or shouldn't lump them all together. There also needs to be some level of understanding here, because at the end of the day, again, police are just people too. And that's what those calling for the police to be defunded or abolished or reimagined have to keep in mind here. Even if you develop what you think is the perfect system, it still will be run or carried out by human beings. And incompetent or flawed or ill-willed individuals will still find their way into your perfect little system and do bad things. Yes, no matter what system we have in place, we should try to limit their numbers. We should focus on better training. We should keep a watchful eye out for bad cops. More of them should wear body cams. There are many things we can do better because nobody should ever be unjustly harassed by a cop, and certainly no one should ever lose their life to one unjustly. But again, at the end of the day, we're still asking human beings to do an incredibly difficult job. Taking it back to Star Wars again, for years I've heard people make a case against the Jedi of the prequel era. I've heard people claim they needed to fall or even be destroyed, that they were a corrupt organization and had lost their way. And I do agree the system and organization had its problems. But how many bad individual Jedi were actually in the system? How many Jedi were evil or had ill intent? I dare say almost every single one of them had good intentions and got caught up in the politics of the era, and then got burnt out during the Clone Wars. And whenever someone tells me they think the Jedi needed to end in the prequels and that they shouldn't ever have returned, that it was an inherently flawed system that could never work, I ask them, was the galaxy better or worse off without them? And sure, there's a lot of nuance that we can address in this question. And do keep in mind here that Palpatine wanted to do away with them for a reason. He knew, as did originally almost everyone in the galaxy, that they were a force for good. But if they could be painted in a bad or negative light, people would turn on them. People would be okay with and cheer for the extermination of the Jedi. And then in their absence, it allowed Palpatine to create his own policing force and to rule the galaxy as Emperor. And so when I now hear people talk about abolishing the police, doing away with them altogether, I like to ask that person if they think the highest crime rate neighborhoods in this country will be better or worse off without the police. And if they say better, my response is to ask them back if they'd then be willing to move into one of these neighborhoods once the cops are gone, since it'll be safe now without them around, right? Because I truly feel anyone who supports defunding or abolishing the police should be willing to put their life where their mouth is, because the lives of those actually living in these neighborhoods right now is certainly on the line here. And before wrapping this video up, let me say something absolutely every level-headed and rational person will agree with. Let me find some common ground with everyone no matter what you think of anything or everything else I had to say. Which is that even one incident of police brutality is unacceptable. It should not happen, and when it does, the offending officer should be punished. Because the thing is, nobody disagrees with that statement. Nobody thinks it's okay for the police to harass and brutalize the citizens they're sworn to protect and serve. Everybody wants to stop this and is appalled when it happens. There is no other side to be fought against on this topic. It's a phantom enemy if ever there was one. And the funny or ironic thing here is, the ones who probably hate bad cops the most are good cops. Bad cops are the Sith to their Jedi. They're mortal enemies that I'm sure they'd do anything to stop and protect us against. Bad cops have created this idea that all cops are evil and need to be punished or done away with. And really, it doesn't get any more wrong or unfair than to judge the many based on the actions of the few. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about anything or everything I had to say here. So leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars and a few other things. And until next time, thanks for watching.